Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering human resources now hysterical over elimination of equity from DEI. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. We were ahead of this story. We came out with a video right away when this was announced on LinkedIn. Equity is being removed from diversity, equity, and inclusion from the largest human resources organization in the world. They're used in 180 different countries to establish benchmarks, licensing, certification for what is and isn't appropriate in human resources in professional organizations, businesses, nonprofits. Anywhere where you have a human resources person, they establish a standard for how a business is supposed to operate its human resources, and part of that is its diversity, equity, and inclusion program, which no longer includes equity. And if you think the ladies, the men, the people who used to be in charge of human resources are happy to lose that control over the employees, are happy to lose that ability to affect and direct the lives of the people that work at that company, they are not happy about it. I covered some comments from people's LinkedIn posts, and I thought for a while that might be the end of it, but it's just gone kind of nuclear in the meantime. Coming from Bloomberg, major article, HR world in uproar over DEI after industry group drops equity. And from Fast Company, SHRM, a leading HR organization, they are the biggest HR organization with more than 900,000 followers on their LinkedIn alone. And they are no longer focusing on equity in their DEI approach. The group switched to the acronym IE&D, which stands for inclusion and diversity, but no longer equity, has sparked strong pushback from some HR and DEI experts. Experts like this, who no longer get to dictate hiring strategies that are non-productive for important companies. This is who these people are. This is what their entire life is all about. They love their cats, and they love to be able to control what a company can say and do, and how they can hire their employees, and what opportunities everyone needs to get, and who's allowed to get paid this, and who's allowed to get paid that, and who gets this manager position, and not based on their qualifications, based on their equity concept, based on how they're going to create fairness in the world, to make the world a better place for their cats, or whatever it is they're trying to do. They ain't allowed to do it anymore. Largest HR association omits E for equity in main acronym. SHRM's move has sparked wide backlash from hiring managers. The world's biggest human resources association dropped equity from its diversity program, drawing anger from hundreds of talent managers online with comments such as backwards, shameful, and cowardly. The Society for Human Resources Management, that's SHRM, said it will be adopting the acronym IE&D, or Inclusion and Diversity, and removing the E from its previous IE&D strategy. But by emphasizing inclusion first, we aim to address the current shortcomings of DE&I programs, which have led to societal backlash and increasing polarization, it announced on LinkedIn. It said it remained committed to advancing equity under its inclusion strategy. Which is to say, you can try to advance equity, but there's going to be accountability for this now. This lady doesn't get to do whatever she wants to do anymore and tell other companies what to do. There's no authority for it anymore. There's no certification that says, well, whatever I think is equity, whatever I think is fairness, is what you have to do now. Because look at me, I'm an expert. I'm certified by SHRM. Well, not anymore. SHRM's move is a sign that even hiring managers who've encouraged diversity in the workplace are beginning to shy away from DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. Backlash against these programs in the US has grown over the last year, most notably from conservative figures. Activists have also been attacking companies for the diversity initiatives, leading to companies like Best Buy and Johnson & Johnson to downplay or remove DEI from corporate filings. Tractor Supply Company said last month it would eliminate DEI roles after it was targeted on social media by conservative influencer Robbie Starbuck. SHRM's move drew angry reactions from some of its members, with its LinkedIn post on the decision garnering over 700 comments, mostly from other HR professionals who rebuked the association for acquiescing to pressure. Which is not really what they did. The problem is equity means nothing, which is basically a license to do whatever you want. If you're at a company, or if you're like this nice lady, consulting companies telling them what to do and saying, oh no, that's equity. And then she can go to another company and say, oh no, this is equity. Oh, you know what? I'm at a different company and I feel like doing this. Well, that's equity. It was a blank check for illegal discrimination and hiring decisions. SHRM CEO Johnny Taylor Jr. said the term equity is confusing and getting in the way of productive conversations about making its members' workplaces more inclusive of all people and points of view. They certainly don't want inclusion for points of view. They want one point of view, which is let these people do whatever it is that they want at a company and to a company. Quote, there's no common agreement about what it means, Taylor told Bloomberg. As an example, he pointed to a debate about whether to try to target equity of opportunity or equity of outcome for diverse employees. We found that, my gosh, we're spending all of our time debating the acronyms and the words instead of saying what we're really trying to achieve. And he's busy certifying these people and saying, yeah, you can have a certification and I'm going to give you the authority to bring in these random equity programs based on whatever it is that you want to do. And we're saying that's appropriate. We're certifying and licensing that. Not anymore. SHRM says it represents about 340,000 members in 180 countries, impacting the lives of more than 362 million workers and their families. In addition to setting the standard best practices for the industry, not just for SHRM, not just for the people that are part of SHRM and subscribe to their services and use their certification. They actually set the standard for the industry. So everyone in the HR industry is watching what these guys do, and they're following the standard that they set. When they say it's this, then it's this. Everybody copies them. The group lobbies for laws and rules around issues like benefits policy, hiring, immigration, and taxes. It also offers some of the sector's best-known certification programs, which companies often subsidize for their employees. So if you want a human resources manager at your company pays SHRM, and then SHRM gives you certification and training, and then you're a certified human resources practitioner approved by SHRM for your company. This isn't the first time that SHRM has changed its diversity acronyms. About a year ago, as more companies were being sued for programs that were discriminating toward non-marginalized groups, SHRM changed its policy of DE&I to IE&D. Taylor explained the change in September, saying the inclusion was the most crucial yet toughest to implement imperative. SHRM's rationale is, quote, backwards and disappointing, said Kim Rohrer, who's held senior human resources roles at tech firms including Oyster HR Incorporated. Last year, she founded Peak HR, in part out of frustration with SHRM. So she set up and co-founded Peak HR, which is what this was. It was Peak DEI, and now that's gone. Quote, you can't ignore the systemic injustices marginalized communities have faced for centuries in this country and think that equity will just happen, she said, adding it's SHRM's job to explain what equity is. When we hear people saying that DEI is harmful or DEI is problematic, we should be fighting against it. And that's the point of SHRM. There is no definition for equity. The only definition for equity is it's whatever this lady says it is, with unlimited influence to do whatever it is that she wants to do inside of a company if she thinks that's going to make the world a great place. That's a little bit too much power if you don't own the company. If you own the company, make it the kind of company you want it to be. But if it's not your company, you're not supposed to have that level of power in a company. Kim Rohrer is among almost 300 people who've supported a petition calling for HR professionals to divest from SHRM and cancel their membership. What SHRM should do is take those 300 people and cancel their certifications with SHRM and then just ban them from the group. And as soon as it affects somebody personally, that's when their own personal equity kind of comes into play. And they start to say to themselves, you know, if this is going to affect me personally, I don't care what happens with systemic this or that. I care about me, which is really what all of these programs are all about. People becoming saviors of others at the expense of the company and the rest of the employees. Their own personal virtue signaling, their own personal self-gratification. Joelle Emerson, that's this lady, who leads prominent DEI consultancy Paradigm, said the uproar isn't about the term itself. There isn't just one correct acronym to use, she said. But she added, to place all blame on polarization on DE&I programs and none on anti-diversity activists intent on dismantling every component of this work is not just offensive to people who do this work, it calls into question the credibility and awareness of the organization. Let's think about this just logically for a moment, and this is a very intelligent and logical woman. We'll go over her background in a second. What is SHRM supposed to do? They have clients that are saying, excuse me, could you define what this equity means? And also, by the way, we're being sued because what we're doing is obviously illegal and we're following the instructions that SHRM is giving us, so we'd like to not be in trouble with lawsuits and embarrassing ourselves and losing all of this money for these ridiculous, unproductive policies. Could you just give us either an explanation of what the E is supposed to be in equity so we can follow like some consistent instructions and then use that to defend ourselves while we're being sued at the very least? Which, of course, they can't do. Of course, there's no definition for it, so there's no protection from lawsuits. SHRM had nothing else to do except to say we cannot advise equity anymore. We can advise inclusion and diversity for all of your employees and fair treatment of everyone, but we can't push equity, especially when we can't define it. It can't just be that according to SHRM, whatever it is that you think equity is, you could just do that and we'll certify you and back that up. And that's what Joel and the rest of them are so upset about. From Joel's perspective, the strong reaction to his group's move is just an indication of how divisive the term has become. Quote, if politics were driving this, then we would have just abandoned the whole thing. I mean, think about it. That's the path of least resistance, she said. We know this work is important. It's really important. And what's motivating us is a desire to deliver on this, not debate words. What's motivating them is this bizarre feeling of power that they get from virtue signaling. They're not improving people's lives. They're creating conflict wherever they go. They're luring people into jobs and careers that they're not qualified to do because of their skin color. Skin color does not create qualification, the same way that representation does not equal story in a movie. There's no way of escaping merit on a long-term basis. Sure, you can get a CEO of a company if they're not qualified and they can keep that job for a year or two and essentially let the rest of the management team pretty much kind of run the company. But eventually, there'll be a decision. Something urgent will happen. There'll be an emergency. There'll be a problem that the CEO needs to publicly deal with. And when that comes up, they get exposed. Now, that's the CEO. It could also be for a management position. If you're not qualified, if you can't do the job, eventually, no matter how many people are trying to cover for you, it's not going to work out. And just putting people in certain jobs because you think that's fair is not a way to run a business. It's not a way to run a rodeo either. You can't do it. And the businesses start to fall apart. And then, of course, the people who were qualified, who were entitled for that position, are going to sue the company. Not all of them, but some of them. And some of them is millions of them. And don't get me wrong, Joel Emerson's very intelligent. Joel Emerson is the founder and CEO of Paradigm, a diversity and inclusion strategy firm that partners with leading technology startups and Fortune 500 companies to build stronger, more inclusive organizations. She's also a graduate of Stanford Law School. This is no dummy. Founded in 2014, Paradigm has partnered with companies like Lyft, Pinterest, Slack, and Visa to design and implement effective diversity and inclusion strategies. Paradigm's approach is data-driven and evidence-based. By using data to identify barriers to inclusion and designing solutions grounded in research, Paradigm helps its clients drive measurable change. They can have data-driven reasons for why certain people aren't in certain job positions and then say, look, here's the data. We found the reason, but that's not the solution. Why is not a solution? Why is only a fraction of a solution? After why comes how. Why are these people not in these jobs? Maybe they don't have the training. Maybe they don't have the discipline. Maybe they didn't have the right family upbringing. Maybe they didn't complete their education. Maybe they don't really want this job. Maybe this person wants a different kind of job, regardless of their skin color or their gender or their sexual preference. Whatever the why is fine. You can have data for it. But the how is what trips up managers. You can't just say, I want this to happen without the plan of how. I guarantee you, Joelle doesn't have the how part figured out. Because if she had the how part figured out and it made any measurable productive sense, this wouldn't even be a question. All of the work that she wants to do would be able to be done. Before founding Paradigm, Joelle was a women's rights lawyer, where she represented clients in gender discrimination litigation and advocated for local, state, and federal policies to ensure equal pay for women. Okay, but when you're an employer, you also do look at what someone's history is. And for example, if they sued people at their previous company, you might not want to hire that person. Would you really want to bring in a consultant who has a reputation for suing companies over gender discrimination issues? I wouldn't. Why would you want this consultant anywhere near your company? They will find things. Maybe they'll find things that are completely appropriate. Maybe they're not appropriate. In a lot of cases, there's a dispute. Gender discrimination, for example, doesn't often take into account that women sometimes leave work because of pregnancies. So there's a pay gap because that person is not going to be at the company as long. What they like to call the gender pay gap. So this lady who you bring in as a consultant who's going to charge you either hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for whatever the fees are, for whatever the services are, is also looking for opportunities either to threaten you that she's going to sue you, or that she might just sue you after all, or turn you over to some other lawyer friend she has, all to try to create a more diverse work environment, which has no productivity measurement. No measurement to say this is how we're making more money for your company. And that's why people like this consultant are very upset with SHRM, because they've lost this blank check, this unlimited authority to tell your company what they need to do, regardless of the results, when people are actually hired for their positions. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.